Hello and welcome to the National Road Safety Partnership Program webinar, How to Clean and Maintain Your Vehicle to Prevent the Spread of Germs and Bacteria, especially COVID-19. My name is Jerome Carslake and I'm the Program Director of the National Road Safety Partnership Program and its many activities. To find out more, please visit the NRSPP website, register for our newsletter, or even better, follow us on social media such as our LinkedIn page. Today's session is going to go for approximately 60 minutes. And we're going to have plenty of time for discussion throughout. Cameron's made a point, he wants to make this as interactive as possible. We're recording our session today and it will also be shared on the NRSPP website and freely available afterwards as well. We love your input. I forgot to update that picture. We love your input to make this webinar as interactive as possible. So please do send through your questions by typing them into the question box. There is a chat feed as well for comments, but our preference is put them into the question box, because you never know if something goes pear-shaped, or if we run out of time, we can always send them back to Cameron. And sometimes we have had to actually re-recorded because we had one little issue. That was my fault. And we're going to take lots of questions throughout, and Cameron wants as many as possible. So next slide, please, Cameron. That's right. So now to our presenter. As I said his name a few times, he's got a great backdrop there, very envious. No mask either, I've noticed. So Cameron Wearing's joining us today all the way from Adelaide, where he can move around nice and freely. So welcome, Cameron.
Thank you very much. You're happy for me to kick on from here now?
Mate, I think you're the expert in this area, so please do.
Lovely. So everybody, welcome along. This COVID program was first developed in the very early stages of COVID, and we're modifying it as we go along. Jerome has already suggested lots of questions, so please fire them through your question box. If you manage to stump me, which I hope you do and I hope you don't, but if you do, we'll certainly go and do the homework. So we're now 6 months into this pandemic. We've got a pretty good idea what COVID-19 is. Of course, in the early stages of developing this, it was all still very new. We didn't know anywhere near as much as we do now. We know better about how it's transmitted, and there's some interesting points there later on. So our initial resources are starting from the various Department of Health websites around the country. That's our starting point. Obviously, we used WHO, but our starting point is with the...
It's all good. Just checking. Has everyone got audio? Just checking. Michael's just shot through a query saying there's no audio. Kalpesh, I believe you've got it. Is everyone else fine? Yep, fine from others. Michael, I just recommend if there is a problem, you just maybe just log back in, log out and log back in. Sorry, Cameron?
Would you like me to wait?
Oh no, keep going. It'll be recorded.
Okay, and this isn't the interesting stuff really. So now that we do better understand COVID, there are some howevers. Recognising very quickly that the car is a workplace, and so now prevention is very much a true thing, and it's an ongoing thing. So we're talking about how to reduce the risk of spreading the infection, and we'll also be referring to four-wheel drive, strangely enough, as well as sedans. So there's a bit that we've learned in the four-wheel drive area, would you believe? And so the obvious stuff of practicing good hand, sneeze, cough hygiene as part of our defence. For example, the coughing and sneezing method that we use differs to what you might see on TV. We're going to recap this anyway. So washing hands frequently with soapy water. It's the soap that breaks the surface tension of the water and helps wash things away. To cover your cough and sneeze, this is the one that's normally promoted, is the sneeze into the organ.
Yep.
Alcohol-based hand sanitizer, that's obviously what breaks the protein layer on the virus and kills it. And that will be referred to again later on as to what amount of alcohol to water you should have. And avoiding contact when unwell, the 1.5 meters apart is another well-known one. And masks are about protecting others from you, which is often a misunderstood thing as well. Following slides introduce the systems we use and what we've experienced in the last 6 months.
Thanks, Cameron. Looking forward to it.
What you need to wipe down, this is the detail. So Alcohol and detergent solutions, which are water soluble. We use 60% alcohol or methylated spirits to water. It needs to be better than 50%, so clearly 60% just helps to spread the load. In the early days, it was really difficult to get methylated spirits. Easier now, but early on it was difficult. So what could we get away with? 60%, and that spread it out. And we managed to locate it through more car-related places, less than warehouses, so like the Bunnings and so forth. They ran out extremely quickly. So we found that car supply places had ample. You must clean areas that you regularly touch, and we'll narrow that down shortly. And avoid soaking areas. So you're not spraying it and soaking it and letting water run down into the electrics, for example. And with a share vehicle, that could be a pool vehicle or one that you just share with another colleague, you need to take particular care there. So in our respects, we're conducting driver training. So it's being shared by various people every single day. So there's a couple of things that we engage to make sure that, firstly, we're observing protocol, but secondly, we're making sure that with the amount of movement going inside the vehicle, that it's absolutely spotless. We advise using against hydrogen peroxide or bleach. So these solutions absolutely will kill the virus, but they will generally guarantee to damage the interior of the vehicle as well. So you would use bleaches and peroxides for other areas, like kitchen benches, for example, would generally be something more akin to that. So the door handles, both inside and outside of the vehicle. Outside is often forgotten, but the virus can live for quite some time on steel, and outside of the vehicle exposed to the elements, it'll continue to live. So you could have up to half a day of life out of a virus on a door handle. So that needs to be cleaned both inside and out. Steering wheel plus the reach and height adjusters, which are hidden underneath. Gear knobs. We've included the four-wheel drive, the old school four-wheel drive here, which includes the transfer case, just to get a wipe. Handbrake, again, old school handbrake, and mirrors and mirror controls. The wiper stalk, radio dials, turning signal stalk, the bonnet release, fuel cap release, temperature controls and airflow controls, seat belt plus the latch that she clips into, keys and start buttons, fuel nozzle, of all things. I was surprised when we understood that, because I thought fuel would have behaved like alcohol and killed it, but it can live around the area. And this is the most...
On that, Michael, sorry, Cameron, on that, what about when someone's refueling the car as well?
Yes, and in fact, the trick there is to use, in our kit, we have black gloves specifically. Black is the only colour that won't degrade when you're using fuel. And of course, they're being touched all the time. So with, one thing I haven't been able to find out is that there's a difference between petrol and diesel. But in the early on, being very careful with all of that. And early on, petrol stations were providing wipes. They're not doing that anymore. But the black glove is the only one that won't degrade in a matter of seconds, whereas an opaque glove will degrade as soon as you put your hand on the fuel nozzle. It starts degrading almost immediately.
Wow.
The big surprising one for us, though, was the hub of this. Again, it's old four-wheel drive. Not many organisations run with this system anymore, but that's one that also needs a clean from the potential of being touched. Seat adjusters and levers, and things like digital mobile radios or two-way radios or UHFs and so forth, these types of things also need to be wiped down, particularly if they're regularly used. And then a general wipe down of the dash area. We get a bit carried away. We get into the air vents as well, even though it's very well filtered prior to that. It'd be unlikely the virus would come through the filter, especially the carbon filter in the modern air conditioning. So we're now going to recap this. You'll get to hear it all over again.
I actually see it happen in reality.
Virus, hasn't this caused a fuss? So while we're all trying to work out how we're going to go about our work, we're one of the organisations who's been trying to keep ahead of this whole problem by engaging in different stages of isolation and conducting training. In the meantime, though, we do have some systems in place that are proven to work through the World Health Organisation and the Federal Government of Australia. So we have your little tips here. Firstly, you must be on fresh air with your air conditioning. Secondly, you must open a window. Third, not sneezing into your elbow, but actually sneezing and coughing into your shirt. That way everything is captured better than being squirted out on the sides with your elbow. But I have a list here of the things that we've been engaging in recently. The first thing, I suppose, is understanding that we need to keep the car clean. So our cars are kept clean anyway, but now we're going overboard and we're sterilising things as we go. So door handles inside and out, the key fob, the starter button, the gear knob, steering wheel stalks like the wipers and indicators, the buttons on the steering wheel, the seat buckle, seat adjusters, mirror controls, radio controls, and the air vents for the air conditioner. So what we do is we get a group of things together. If we're doing training on board, we have our mask, we have our gloves, we have our alcohol spray, our wipes, our hand gel, and a rag. But on top of that, we also have little bags, little disposable bags that once we're finished with items, we throw everything into those disposable bags. It's all tied up and thrown away. But one of the key things, especially when you're in the close confines of a car, is making sure that your air conditioning is up high, you have your windows cracked open to have airflow, and any coughing and sneezing is done into your shirt. After that, all the cleaning is done. And I'll give you a rough idea how we do that now. Right, so I'm going to start from the outside of the car. This means the keys are going to be first. Once I've done the keys, I can then do the outside door. Now I can do the inside of the door, the window controls and the mirror controls. Now through to the start button. After the start button, I can do the bonnet release and the fuel release, the steering wheel, indicator and wiper stalks, air conditioning controls. Now onto the info screen, the air vents, and of course the gear stick and the part brake. Don't forget to do the rear vision mirror and the seat belt buckles, and that should pretty much do you. Now the trick is, remember, drive with your fresh air on and your back windows just cracked open a bit.
So you're hearing it again and again, but the reinforcement there is that if you've got the spray on board, which you've pre-mixed, you've got your rag, you've got your black gloves, you can wipe everything down quite quickly. Just bear in mind that those wipes, the wipe down wipes, are completely useless for anything other than cleaning. So they don't kill the virus. They don't do anything to the virus. In fact, if anything, just spreads it around. So it's only the alcohol and soapy-based products that will, like the sanitizers and so forth, that'll fix that. The wipes are just simply for cleaning. So into social distancing, a little bit of early on stuff here where there's different rules state by state and even region by region. So early on, measures were very harsh. And so we went straight into recommendations of maximum of 2 people per car. The example here, obviously, of 2 people side by side, particularly coming in for such close proximity, is not the idea. However, going to a diagonal system across the car, which was a bit strange when it came to doing training, and was all a bit odd, but this is what we would do in ideal chauffeur training scenarios as well. So it wasn't that difficult, but just odd. But that's the farthest you could be away in a cabin. The air conditioning set to fresh, not on recirculate. it's not common knowledge that this is also generally the best setting to have anyway, particularly if you're driving in dusty environments. There's a perception that recirculate keeps the dust out. That's a furphy in a modern day car. So fresh air is best anyway. Where conditions permit, the windows to be wound down somewhat to allow the air flow through the vehicle. And that airflow is actually one of the most critical parts of prevention, instead of obviously sneezing over the controls or coughing over the controls, but and even speaking is enough to release the virus. But the airflow at the very least takes it out quite rapidly. So that's actually one of the most critical parts of prevention, is to have your back windows cracked open a little bit. The example that's given here is just all the way down. That's excessive, it's not necessary. And in warmer conditions, you'll just end up air conditioning Australia, so there's no advantage there anyway. So 2 to 5 centimetres is ample. And then in general, we've been taking what we just call a fresh air break. Now this is before the normal 2-hour break that you might have on a long day. The 90 minutes works in nicely with ensuring that you're in before the fatigue set. You're ahead of that. You're keeping people alert and fresh, and the cabin is fresh, and we'll open it up and give it another clean. And so it's like working in a hospital, but I suppose that's what we're trying to achieve. Some observations.
Sorry, Gary, just a quick question for you, just from observations. Question here from Tulane. She's asking, what about wipes that are listed with the TGA as an effective against COVID-19? Any thoughts on that?
Right, so that's different to like a wipe. That's a sanitizing wipe. So, and I think they're marketing it now as 99.9%. So, yeah, it's pretty confident. And the one that springs to mind would be the Dettol brand, and so on, or Pino Cleans and so forth, that actually have that antiseptic quality to it. And if they're advertising that, they've actually satisfied that requirement. But the wipes that were shown in that video were more like
baby wipes.
Baby wipe, yeah. To cool yourself off, or just to wipe your hands clean if you've been working with dirty things. But it doesn't perform a valuable thing. But no, I've forgotten the lady's name. I'm sorry, but no, if you've got
Tulane. Thank you, Tulane.
Yeah, so the sanitizing wipes are fine. Yeah, they'll do exactly that for sure. And but it's probably more important to remember about the window, to be honest. So that's I think the one thing that a lot of people don't think about is just have those windows cracked open. That's remarkably important. And so with around sort of the mid-March time, there was a very rapid decline in the request for training, and most of our main clients sent in emails rather abruptly saying that everything's on hold. That was obviously an expectation. It was immediate and it was savage. And so we were really surprised when emergency services came to us requesting training, and happy to go 2 to 1. So there were 3 people in the one vehicle. Now, obviously, you'd expect people in emergency services to be, they were ambulance related, by the way, the high-end ambulance operators, high-end paramedics. And they, plus with us, I think we were more conscientious to keep it clean than they were, but they were fine. Like they said, no, we're clean, don't worry about it. So it was interesting that, we're in this almost a state of semi-panic, and they're fine about it. And, but all of our training basically went either one-on-one or online. And the people who were doing one-on-one were people who were going into critical areas, teachers going into desolate areas for like Aboriginal communities, let's say, some people in other parts of business that were required to do reasonably long distances or arduous conditions, so that continued. But some have now returned to 3 to 1, so that's happened already. We're doing that obviously in the states that will permit it, so Victoria isn't in a position to do that. And but it's good to have returned to 3 to 1. It's everyone's been quite confident and comfortable. We found now that because we're pretty heavy duty with this particular style of webinar, in the early stages we were doing this course regularly for a number of people, and COVID kits sort of spread like wildfire. Everyone heard about it, talked about it, and so for making this information freely available, and even down to the tricks of go to Repco and get your metho there instead of going to Bunnings, and sort of there's this good little network going on, and so all these COVID kits have popped up everywhere, very similar to the ones that we use. So that was a really good thing to see, and some organisations are continuing to wear masks during training, even though there's no apparent need for it. So there's a real spectrum of what people are doing in trying to deal with it. Maybe it's a bit industry dependent, maybe it's just a bit too risk averse, but I think continuing to wear masks in training, especially when you're one-on-one, I think in some states that's no longer necessary, but it's their choice.
What about when you have the 2-to-1, the 3-to-1? Do you see other users in the car wearing masks as well?
No.
Or is it?
No, but see, we've got pretty good contact tracing, and it's a requirement when you enter our building that you have the COVID sign on, and you also have the sign on into the building, and a bit of a stat deck style thing that you've been behaving yourself in the last 14 days, haven't been in here, there or anywhere. So similar to what a lot of organisations are doing, not quite as heavy duty as, let's say, the mining companies, but we're confident that we're managing that. There's some people who are a bit nervous by it, but we talk about what we do, and we have our COVID kit, which mine just lives next door to me. It goes with us absolutely everywhere, and we make a point of being conscientious on the day, and so do they, and everyone's being part of a solution. So I think there's that underlying buzz of looking after themselves. I think it's been fine. Now let's take Victoria. I'd say, once you're happy and Captain Dan has gone and started to open things up again for you, that to go to 2-to-1, I don't think would be a problem at all, because the numbers will be so low. 3-to-1, I think you might feel a bit brave doing it, but I don't think that'll be a problem either, because it's been so well managed.
Yeah, and there's a good comment here from Rebecca, when she's saying, look, when we transport customers, our company policy is for the worker to wear a mask, and for the customer, and she works in the aged care sector. So, and Vicky, I agree with you. I can't wait till we open up in Victoria, being in Melbourne as well.
But being exposed, if you're dealing with the elderly, you're in a particularly vulnerable group. It would be worth going that next step, just out of common courtesy. I would have thought that, just to make them feel comfortable. It might not have any benefit, but I think that's just the right thing to do. I'd agree with that. I'd be asking that. So yeah, fine. And they're hideous things to wear, and they're a pain in the back. But so what? It's the right thing to do.
Yeah. The only risk management is someone who wears glasses. You've got to try and find a nice one that squashes down around there, so you can keep the seat out of your glasses.
Well, I don't have that, so I hadn't thought of that. Do they fog up?
Yes. So you're always finding one with a metal bar that you can squish down here, so it forces the air out from underneath. Otherwise, I can't see anything.
With glasses, do you look like a Ninja Turtle?
My kids like walking with me.
We'll move on. We're quite we're pleased also that companies are returning to training sooner than we expected. So that's a really good underlying positive, that they're seeing that there's a need there. There's a couple of agri businesses that are going, oh, we've got exposure and we're managing this pretty well. So they're sort of moving into it sooner than they may have anticipated. And so they'll be the main things that we've been exposed to. And we've had no transmission, we've had no exposure. And the other thing is that we've had no problems with degrading the interiors of the cars. The cars that we've been doing this to include Japanese and European, VW to be specific, and Toyota for the commercial vehicles. There's been no sign of any damage to the interiors whatsoever, and they have been constantly wiped out. So our training cars would be logging around 250 Ks a day per program that they do, up to 2 people in the car on average. which is if the instructor drives, that's a third wipe down. So that's probably getting wiped down half a dozen times a day as an absolute minimum. But the need is dropping off very quickly, I think, in areas like South Australia, for goodness sake, and WA, I think they'd be, yeah, they look to be tracking very well there too. So, but overall, it's the hygiene practices are very much part of the prevention, and you need to be diligent with that, and because it gets boring very quickly. Dealing with the likely.
When you say diligent on that as well, just if say it's a fleet vehicle, does that mean every person, whenever they get in the vehicle or leave the vehicle, should do it, or is it the start of the day, the end of the day? What does that operational element look like, just out of interest?
That's actually interesting, particularly with shared vehicles. So the whole shared vehicle thing, like particularly if you had a vehicle, I think the most interesting one is when it's been for 2 weeks and then they do like out in the field and they swap over and do another 2 weeks. There's something that we've been trying to implement with one organisation in particular, and that is that the driver giving up the car cleans the car, does their vehicle check, and COVID cleans it to leave it ready, and the person picking it up does their own cover your backside type of check and cleans it. But really the onus of consideration falls on the previous user, but the onus of ultimate use is on the current user. So it needs to be the person who's about to do the drive that needs to make jolly sure that they've done it themselves, because you can't guarantee the person before. But if it's only you and you only in the car and you're not getting any exposure, you could probably go about life normally. But if you've got exposure to the public, if you've got exposure to if you work in aged care, if you're working with important people, as we are from time to time, we need to make damn sure that we're clear, and if we need to wear a mask, I suppose we do. But because the virus can have a day's worth of life in the car, you would argue that if you didn't drive it for a week, you could go back and it'd be perfectly okay. You'd be dead. Most likely areas of infection are doors and the cabin area for the driver. They're the hotspot areas. We've been trying to promote to be a little bit more considerate to others when using the car. There's just that high level of consideration of airflow and presenting the car back to someone else clean. It does result in a more professional presentation. I can't reinforce enough what it is to have a clean vehicle. Putting the long-term effort into having cars nicely presented and well kept has a really dramatic value on vehicles being presented back for sale at the end of their lease, or however you choose to run your fleet. But there's a real advantage in that. We get a really good return on our cars because of the way in which we keep them and present them. We keep them at a high level. So they're automatically worth $5,000 more than another Hilux because they are so pristine and clean. Even after 250,000 Ks, they are like a new car inside. Admittedly, we're more motivated. I get that.
I think that's a really interesting point, that one as well, because I know talking to some of the corporates and fleet guys that I've spoken with, it's also an indication of if they take greater care in how they present to look after the vehicle, it also can correlate to lower sort of issues, infringements, smashes, little bingles, stuff like that, because there's a degree of pride in how they sort of look after the vehicle.
Pride is a critical thing, but the other thing is also that it does surprise me that fleet managers don't set a variety of KPIs that can be pushed across the fleet and make it the responsibility of the custodian, because you're talking about a bottom line cost, which is something you're very rarely going to make money out of, and the trick to running a good business is reducing your bottom line cost, which with the car means you're trying to improve your return. And the trick to running a fleet is lose the least amount of money possible on the fleet, because you're rarely going to make money out of it. So keeping it clean is just one of the key aspects of not only its value, but also the pride and so forth of the organisation. I think it makes a difference, without a doubt. We have a measurable difference with our fleet. You can do it in dollars and cents really easily. But anyway, hopefully overall, I've just given you a bit more general awareness, just sort of the wheat from the chaff a touch with how to keep it clean in the cabin, based on us being careful both prior to the training and during the training. There's been no dramas whatsoever. In fact, none of us have even had a cold. So we've all been, all of us who are full-time have been full-time the whole time, and not one of us has had a day off due to any type of illness. So it's been the first time, it's the first winter ever that we've had that. And now we're at the end of it, and that's one of our very old cars that has had a long life and is being sent out to pasture.
I've got a great question here from Talene, and so a lot of the cars we saw with the fabric and this sort of stuff. She's just asking, what do you suggest about cleaning the seats when these are fabric? Are disposable seat covers an option?
We also have seat covers. Yes, now there's a variable with how long the virus can live on fabric. It depends on the type of fabric. It seems like steel and metals is where it seems to last longer. But with everything else on the car, by spraying the item and then wiping it instead of spraying it onto the rag and then wiping it, means you hit it immediately. But with the seats, that is more of a wipe, but you're unlikely to get transmission on the seat. Maybe if someone is in the back seat and they cough onto the back of the front seat, that would be the most likely area of transmission. So then I suppose you have to touch that seat as well. Yeah, it's about touching. Touch something and then touch your face. Our GM did a really interesting study on hand cleaning, very, very brief, very, very quick. And it was part of the being a COVID official, I suppose. And she had us wash our hands. And I put a cream on, and she tricked us by, because we're putting all this hand sanitizer on, and it's just doing untold damage to my hands, Jerome. And so we had to put the hand cream on. And so she very kindly gave us this hand cream. Then a little bit later, she's gone, okay, now I want you to wash your hands. This cream was a minor luminescence that showed up under under UV. And if you didn't wash your hands carefully, parts of your hand would glow, especially around your ring, around the crinkles of your fingers and so forth. So the importance of washing your hands in a very, very specific way, this way and around each other and rolling the knuckles in, and that is what got your hands completely clean. But what was interesting was after 20 minutes of putting this hand cream on, how many people had touched their face and their face lit up like acne. It was incredible. And a lot of people don't realize how often they would be touching their hair or their face. And so the transmission occurs by you touching something and then inadvertently touching your face. So you need to be quite vigilant about that. So all good and well cleaning down the car, but things like don't touch your face and have the windows open are probably the best thing you can do. It's really simple.
Reminds me right back to that. It was those, I guess, all these different virus movies you see out there at the moment. They talk about all that. I think about 3,500 times a day you touch your face or something like that.
It is extraordinary. It's an incredible number. In this learning process of learning about touching your face and so forth, and this is a bit odd, but there's a thing where someone would shake their hand, like when you first introduce someone, within 20 seconds of shaking someone's hand, and men would do this mostly, will then they will almost sniff their fingers or touch their nose with their fingers. And the doctors aren't quite sure why that's the case, and presuming it's some sort of primate thing, but men in particular would shake hands and then sniff their fingers. So that's something you've got to be conscious of, and I've become aware of that and go, oh gee, that's really weird. Why am I doing that? And you've got to consciously not do that. But we're not shaking hands, right, are we? We're virtual high fives.
That's a fascinating point. I think we'll probably see a lot of people on this webinar now, the males in particular, and maybe the women will look at their partners or other male friends and think, gee, see, look, you're doing a bit of a primate check there. So I was unaware of that one.
observe it. It's very, very funny. Particularly when there's a group of people meeting for the first time, there's all this hand touching and sniffing going on, and really quite odd. but see, don't touch your face. You know, that's the key. So you're trying to overcome a lot of things which are somehow natural or just built into our makeup. So become aware of it.
Great. Courtney's just mentioned to everyone, look, there's a PDF of vehicle cleaning and a sanitising checklist. So that'd be great. We'll add that into the link and we can share that out with everyone as well. So thank you very much.
Jerome, I'll hand back to you.
That's all right. Do you want to go to the next sort of slide? Do we have any questions from everyone? Do you have any burning questions at all? Or we're trying to make this... It's an interesting sort of topic at the moment. It's front of mind for how organisations are doing it. And I think, once again, being Victorian as we are at the moment, I think it's 210 days or 11 days on lockdown thus far here. Yep, the slide pack will definitely be going out afterwards and it'll be available on the NRSPP website, as will a recording of this as well. So any other questions from our audience at all?
Maybe I have a question to some of the audience, is that how have they found trying to manage this, particularly in the early stages? Have they relaxed it now? And is there a need to relax it now, or should we remain vigilant longer? Because that's the bit we're stepping into now, is where do we take it now? Because SA is quite clean. Queensland's actually doing pretty well, so we're probably relaxing there. Victoria, God, you're on the doorstep in Victoria of just going back. This must be so frustrating for you. But what's going to be the plan when you go back? What are you going to do with your fleet then?
That's a great question. I'd love to hear from people. Question here from Michael: does Glen 20 sanitise car seats? No. It just adds a lovely smell to everything.
If you think it's a lovely smell.
I don't. There's a lot of sarcasm just then.
No, Glen 20 doesn't. Very funny story there of a tradesman going into a house, and the owner of the house made the tradesman stand out there when he hosed him down with Glen 20. That just totally fumigated the poor guy. It does nothing. No.
Another great question here from Talene. What can be done to keep alcohol solutions effective when keeping them in the car in hot weather? If the lid is sealed, will this stop evaporation?
Yes, but it doesn't stop the heat build up and vapor build up in the bottle. So that's actually an area we need to start thinking about, of sort of releasing the pressure and keeping it in a cool place. I'll just show you what we do.
That's a great question, that one, especially with summer coming on now.
Now, we don't leave it in the car, so it goes with us. So in our little, this is our little bag that we use, just a little, what I call a tourist backpack, just with the one strap. There's my metho, there's my rag, there's the spare face masks, there's my hand sanitizer. It's all in here. The useless wipes, the good wipes, tissues. My God, I think my wife packed it. It's got everything for me. They've got they're absolutely everything, and I'm just trying to. They're gel. So all of that just fits into this small bag, and this is awful protocol. But if I just hold everything up, this is everything that goes into it. Just keep going, and so all of that goes with us. We don't leave it in the car. And so the purpose of that is to not expose yourself to that type of thing. Alcohol, you don't want things getting hot in the car. It's no, that wouldn't be good.
So they're basically probably just flying along the way with the car keys, I guess.
Yeah, it just goes with you. It's another bag that you take with you, and it's your COVID kit. And when that COVID goes away, then that bag can go away. But at the moment, it's as important as my backpack that I take with me that has all of my training equipment in it. So it's as simple as that. You just have a kit, you take it with you. So that way it doesn't go in the car. And if you happen to get into, another car, then you have your kit with you. I have seen people get into a taxi and give it a wipe down before they jump in. So I don't know how the taxi driver takes that, but anyway, it's part of the solution. We're all part of it.
That's a great sort of point. And Rebecca makes a comment here. Our company has a great risk and compliance team and a COVID working group who change our policies as needed. So I think what I'm hearing here is making sure you're agile, you can move with best practice, you're reflecting how things are going. And I think it's an interesting point because I know we've spoken a lot about fleet, but when your workers are agile and moving around as it goes out, especially I guess as operations go national a bit more often, if someone coming to Victoria might want to make sure they have their own little travel packs if they fly back in once the airports open up again.
Well, yes, but you do need to be dynamic. The problem with the policy is that often it takes a fair bit of work to get it in. It's even harder work to get it out. If you're prepared to be dynamic and agile and go with it, we can deal with the nastiest of breakouts with this kit that we've got because it's based on the nastiest scenario that we'd faced early on. So we haven't changed with that. What would change is that if we need to bother doing it anymore, which is obviously the desire. But have your own kit, take it with you. It's part of your travel pack, and that way you don't have risk of that. And if you're getting into a hire car, which we use hire cars a lot, we wash them down as well. And I think they expect that. I mean, they're clean when you get in, but they're not the way you want them. And wiping down steering wheels and sanitizing a hire car is now almost becoming a habit. I'm noticing with people now that we actually become quite aware of infection and aware of cleanliness. Interesting talking to some doctors saying, oh, this is going to bring on problems, that we're not going to be as resilient anymore. We're going to be more exposed to simple things. But I'm okay with clean. I think it's...
Well, I think another point, like Selena's just made an interesting point as well. We have ours in a plastic box, and we've requested from our fleet officer to have them placed on the passenger side. Perhaps you might change the protocol by requesting the box and key is retrieved and returned at the same time. I was just reflecting on that as well. The other advantage of this, by having it picked up with the keys, is you can always check to make sure is everything sitting in there as well. Because there's one of the risks is if the pack runs out and the person just goes, it'll be all right. Yeah. That's possibly another risk if the solution or wipes or something, gloves run out.
We have a small workshop, and in that workshop is where all the chemicals and so forth are kept. So all the COVID stuff's kept there. A member of the admin team ensures that that's always stocked up, but it's us as responsible adults to go and keep our own kit. There's no one holding our hand for that. We need to do that ourselves. I think that sense of responsibility is something I'd throw on the whole lot. So if you run out, you need to fix it. And I'm not going to be conducting your audit. You need to be part of this is not business anymore. This is society. And the other advantage is that with your vehicle log sign out, with the keys and so forth, the trainer's already got their bag with them. So we don't have that. If you were to have a key system that had your box that you had to take out, you'd obviously just lift the lid on the box, make sure it's okay, because you're not responsible for the box. It's a shared box. There's something else I had in mind there. It was put on the passenger side. Does that mean that the box is put on the left-hand front, down in the footwell of the passenger side? I don't like boxes floating around in cars anyway. Believe it or not, having the same kit in a plastic box makes it a solid item, and God forbid the worst happens, that will hurt you. When it's loose like this and malleable, you can still have 5 kilograms in here, but won't do anywhere near the damage because the energy disperses as it flops and folds. And it goes behind us, so it gets under the seat or in the boot, so it won't move. That's something I'd be considering.
And that's a really good point, because the energy of a crash, like it was like a 1.5 litre bottle becomes a 20 kilogram mass during a low speed crash. So a lot of people don't understand it's like free flying around. I haven't thought about the risk of that plastic container as well if something untoward happened.
Well, the trick is to have it loose. You know, one of the interesting bits of science behind having a cargo barrier, that if you have, can't remember the ratings now, but let's say you had 100 kilograms of one block of mass in behind a cargo barrier, and that one block of mass comes racing forward and takes and careers into the cargo barrier, you could have 150 kilograms of, let's say, cartons of drink, let's say, 50 kilograms more, because it's all separated. The way in which it hits the cargo barrier disperses very quickly. It doesn't have anywhere near the effect. So a solid item like a box just concerns me marginally. And I'm being a bit particular. That's why we go for the bag, not the box.
So one of the reasons that Selena has it was mentioned, they provide gloves and masks for drivers to use whilst in the vehicle as well. So that's why they sort of have it sitting next to them.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Look, it's not overtly dangerous, so there's no problem there. The gloves. So you're driving with gloves. You're driving with the plastic gloves, I presume. Geez, that must get sweaty after a while. It must become uncomfortable. If you clean it down, you don't need to wear the gloves. You're okay. Just clean it down properly. That would be very uncomfortable, I would have thought, but it would be okay to go just clean it properly, clean hands, don't touch your face. But then again, I'm a purist, so.
I think I've noticed to touch my face a few times during this webinar. I'm suddenly very aware of it, so.
Yeah, I'm conscious, and I've done it twice since talking about it.
Unless do we have any more questions from the audience, everyone online? Otherwise, I guess, Cameron, you've been a wealth of knowledge. We've moved all around a little bit, but it's been absolutely fantastic having you online today, and I'm looking forward to our second one is to really explore and discuss the practicalities of the vehicles when they're parked up and not being used as much.
Yeah, well, that's been a big problem too. But I'd love to talk to you more about that as well. And of course, the tie-wear one, which was our secret squirrel thing. So
that's coming up. So in a couple of weeks, we'll have that one. If you go to the last slide, please, Cameron. And just so everyone know, there's our contact details. We have a number of webinars coming up. So we have another one with Cameron later in 2 weeks' time. We have one around road rage. If you've seen some of the articles in ABC of late, there's a really scary example of that. But we've released an organisational campaign focused on road rage and trying to provide the resources to really engage your workforce, because as everyone returns to work, we're sort of mindful of what's it going to be like for everyone as they get out on the road. And strangely, I say mindful, towards the end of November, as part of Road Safety Week on the 17th, we'll actually be having a mindful road safety webinar with experts from Smiling Minds and some other people from MIARC. So we have some great lineups still coming, and then the year is almost going to be honest. We might have another one later on. So Cameron, thank you so much for your time today.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you all very much in the audience for your great questions in the chat. There will be an email circulated after this with the survey. Please take time if you can to fill it out, and it will all be available afterwards. So once again, thank you to our audience, and thank you, Cameron.